I again welcome to all on behalf of the organizing committee to this particular lecture series. Thank you all. Ratna.
Thank you, sir. Without further delay, now let me take the privilege to introduce our speaker today very briefly. Our today's speaker is Professor Yunita Winarto. He is Professor Emeritus in Anthropology, Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Indonesia, and a member of the Cultural Commission of the Indonesian Academy of Science. He received her Masters of Science in Environmental Technology from the Center of Environmental Technology, Imperial College of Science, Technology and Medicine, UK, and Ph.D. in Anthropology from Department of Anthropology, the Australian National University, Canberra. Her field of studies are in human ecology and public anthropology, with research and collaborative works on the farmer empowerment and creativity, the dialectic between scientific and local knowledge in the areas of integrated pest management and food security, sustainability, sovereignty, and response farming to climate change and variability. In collaboration with a Dutch agrometeorologist, he introduced the agrometeorological learning in science field SOP in 2008 to help farmer coping better to climate change. He is the author of Seed of Knowledge, the beginning of integrated pest management in Java, published in 2004. And secondly, agrometeorological learning, coping better with climate change in the year 2011. Some edited books in Indonesian and various articles in national and international reference journal and chapters in edited book. It's a great pleasure to welcome you, ma'am. I now welcome Professor Yunita Winarto, ma'am, to share his thoughts and wisdom. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all ladies and gentlemen. So thank you very much for your introduction, Professor Suman, also Dr. Ratna. I appreciate that very much. So it is a great pleasure for me to be here to share my knowledge, my experience from just undergraduate students until recent times. Yeah, it is a very, very honorable invitation for me to be able to speak here in a very prestigious lecture series. So first of all, I would like to say my gratitude, thanks to my colleagues, anthropologists from India and Sri Lanka. So representing 3 departments, I maybe cannot mention one by one. The head of department is Professor, who is that, Charmali? And then Dr. Apurba, sorry, I cannot mention
Okay,
it quite good. Yeah, Dr. Khan and Dr. Suman, who organizes this wonderful lecture series. And Dr. Suman persistently sent me his emails, like you mentioned before, and then at last he invited me to share my talk. Yeah. So okay, can I just present my slide here? So
Yes.
I'm sorry if I so share. I have to, yeah. Is it still not, you cannot see? So I'm happy to meet you all, but how is it still not okay?
Yes, kindly open your PPT.
Okay,
Kindly
okay.
click on the PPT, right?
How about this? Not
now,
yet.
We can
yes.
see.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can see.
Is it okay?
It's
Oh
gone.
no. Oh, gone.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, now it shows.
Okay, so
Absolutely
you.
fine. You can do.
Okay, so I choose the theme here for my lecture as Indonesian anthropology in the making. Yeah. So why is it in the making? Because it is still ongoing formation, still ongoing establishment, advancement of Department of Anthropology throughout the country, the archipelago. Also, how we improve the curriculum, also the theoretical and also the practical contribution of anthropologists in Indonesia. So I cannot say that this is Indonesian anthropology as it is now, but maybe it is going to develop in the future in another more advanced discipline. Yeah. So this is the cover of the book. I think this one, the cover of the book that edited by Professor Eric Thompson and Dr. Vineta Sinha from National University of Singapore, just published 2019, in which my paper together co-authored with Iwan Pirus, entitled Boundaries and Ambitions of Indonesian Anthropology, was published there. So my presentation today is based on that article, that also a developed article from the original version I presented in 2008 in a conference of International Conference of Asia Pacific at the Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University in Beppu, Japan. At the time, Professor Shinji Yamashita from Tokyo University invited me to share my experience of Indonesian anthropology and how the Indonesian anthropologists engage with the other anthropologists in Asian. So what I present today is a development of those two papers. So let me continue. So in the first, to begin with, like the previous speakers from the Philippines and the Malaysian, Indonesian anthropology historical roots are also went back to the Dutch colonization. Yeah, so at that time, I could say that during the Dutch colonization, there was a seeds of engaged or public anthropology, as mentioned by Lassiter in his article on public anthropology and collaborative ethnography. There was actually an anthropology or an ethnographer practicing ethnography for the benefits of the colonizer. I think you all might know, especially my Indonesian colleagues, as Christian Snoekorgroenje. Christian Snoekorgroenje, also known as, he had a Muslim name, Haji Abdul Ghafur. So he was an expert on Islam by being a Muslim to learn about Islam. And then he was also an expert on Aceh, and as well as in Islam. And then his main, main mission and responsibility is to provide advices to the Dutch. Now, he advised the Dutch to differentiate Islam as a religion from Islam as a political movement, then from Islam as a religion, and with the Islam as a political movement. So the later one, the Islam as a political movement, was the true enemy of the colonizer. So he categorized Islam into three aspects: as a religion, a social life, and political movement, and the need to develop different approaches to each aspect. So do not interfere with the religion or the social life, but with the political movement, then the Dutch can develop their political agenda. So, and there was a long fight by the Acehnese. I think it was so difficult to defeat Acehnese by the Dutch. So by providing a detailed ethnographic understanding about Acehnese, then at last the Dutch could defeat the Acehnese because of Snoekorgroenje. So actually, this is not quite happy things for us. But anyway, this is the history. This was the history. So the Dutch colonizers actually, based on his advice, so developed the politics of divide and impera. So made interfere with our life in religion and what you call it, in religion, and then governance and kingdom, in education. Yeah. So the Dutch colonizers also developed the politics of association. They associate themselves with the elite as vis-a-vis, so against the commoner. So like also the politics of divide and impera. So Christian Snukulgronya was well known, I think, also in the world of his role in the history of Indonesian nation. Yeah. Now, the Dutch also developed Indology. This is an ethnological study on Indonesia for Dutch colonial staffs. All Dutch colonial staffs had to study, had to learn about Indonesia. Yeah. So there was a well-known, I could say the first, but James Fox said the last, the first or the last. But this was the only comparative study on customary law by Cornelis van Vollenhoven. So this is his picture, Cornelis van Vollenhoven. He defined 19 regions of customary laws, or Rechtskringen, yeah, based on similarities and differences of the indigenous customary laws throughout the archipelago and the other traditions of foreign Orientals. So this is the map of the 19 regions. So I took this from the book, also edited by Professor Kuncharaningrat here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So all are 19 regions. And it was a very, very, what do you call it, significant finding by Vollenhoven, because all in the younger generation of Indonesian, not only Indonesian anthropologists, but also those who studied law, had to refer to his work in understanding the diverse customary laws in Indonesia. So he advised, so different from Snukulgronya, he advised the colonial government to recognize indigenous forms of adat law and refrain from imposing on the colony a system of common state and private law based on Western legal ideas. He introduced so diverse. Indonesia has a very diverse adat laws. So various forms of adat law, according to him, cannot be studied alone without an understanding of the complexity of social, historical, and cosmological context. So we owed him with this finding. And unfortunately, according to James Fox, this was the last and the only comparative study on customary law in Indonesia. Maybe we need to renew this and invite the Indonesian anthropologists to renew this customary law. Okay, sorry. Now, the younger generation of Dutch anthropologists are well known from Leiden University. Leiden University was the center of the studies about Indonesia. So many documents, very rich Dutch documents were documented, were archived in that library of Leiden University. The strong structural approach was also applied in the ethnographic study on Indonesia. And this is Jan Petrus Benjamin de Jocelyn de Jong. He was also known as developed the Dutch anthropology based on structure approach with 4 key elements as the core: connubium circulation, multiple unilineality, multiple symbolic classifications, and resistance towards foreign culture. His claim is very important for me, that Indonesian, and for me, and I think for Indonesian anthropologists also, that Indonesian anthropology could only come into existence with a deep understanding of the role of anthropology as a service to the home country. So in his life, his age, we already had our independence, yeah, in 1945. So he observed the independence of Indonesia and the development of Indonesian anthropology. So his nephew, Now, this is the Patrick Edward, the Jocelyn de Jong, 1922 to 1999. He was well known with his ethnographic study on Minangkabau, West Sumatra, by also applying structure anthropology and also combine it with Levi-Strauss structure transformation. This is the ethnographic of Minangkabau, just a photo of the Minangkabau people. And it reminded me with my study at the Australian National University when I took a course on economic and political structure. I had to read Jocelyn de Jong's article on West Sumatra, which I have not read. I had not read it before when I was in Indonesia. But now the question is that, what was the significant theoretical contribution of Dutch anthropology in the development of Indonesian anthropology? Is there any legacy of Dutch anthropology? So let's see later. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Now, after the independence, now this is the photo of Professor Kuncharaningrat. He was the founding father of Indonesian anthropology as a discipline. We used to call him Pak Kun, and I was lucky to be his student. I think there are some other colleagues of mine, like Professor Yasmin, who is also here. We were the students of Professor Kuncharaningrat. When I moved to Jakarta, I was an undergraduate bachelor student in another university in the capital of West Java province. So the post-independence of Indonesia, I think 1950 onwards, because we still had a battle during from 1945 to 1949, 1950 with the Dutch. With the Dutch and the British army that would like they would like to return to Indonesia. So we fight against them. So even though we already declared our independence in 1949, but actually we had our full independence in 1950. So 1950 onwards is the formation of Indonesian anthropology as a discipline, apart from the Dutch anthropology. Yeah? So we owe Pak Kun, the late Professor Kuncharaningrat, for his great ambition, if I could say, but also clear direction and mission of how he is going to develop the Indonesian anthropology. So the first, of course, the development of anthropological curriculum in the undergraduate studies at the Universitas of Indonesia, also in Pajajaran University in Bandung, and another one in Yogyakarta. Yogyakarta was the capital of Yogyakarta province, where Professor Kuncharaningrat was born. Yeah, he got his title Raden Mas. Is a noble title. Yeah, he was a descendant of the noble, the kingdom, the kingship in Yogyakarta. So I could say from my experience observation that the curriculum of anthropology in Indonesia was developed based on Dutch and American traditions. So Dutch has a strong ethnographic, ethnology studies. Yeah. So, but no particular theories or school of thought of Dutch anthropologists, I think, was underlying the early phase of Indonesian anthropology. As students, we have to study all kinds of theories and the historical development of all theories in the world. But a Dutch anthropology as a strong, like structure anthropology school of thought, it's not as strong as prominent as the British structure anthropology. Maybe you experienced that in India and Sri Lanka, as well as the French, Levi-Straussian structure anthropology. But Kuncharaningrat published his early books on the introduction of anthropology, the history of theories in anthropology, and the core elements of social anthropology. These are the basic books, the main textbooks in anthropology. He spent a lot of his time and energy to publish these books because he knew that we lacked of books, and mainly written in Dutch and also in English. which maybe not all Indonesian students are familiar with those books. So we learn about anthropology from his books as the basic understandings, and especially his definition of culture consists of the the mind, and then the the feeling as the products of what behavior of peoples that constitutes a culture. So became widely spread for both anthropologists and publics. He took his undergraduate studies in Indonesian literature in Gajah Mada University, but he accomplished his master degree in Yale University. And in Yale University, he was involved in collecting the materials of Javanese culture to enrich the human relations area files developed in Yale University. So this, when he returned to Indonesia and when he taught us about ethnography, when he started to lecture on ethnography of Southeast Asia or Africa, he always start from the human relation area files. So, and this influences emphasis on ethnography. He developed this writing of ethnography based on 7 cultural universals referred to Raymond Firth. I remembered last week's role of Raymond Firth in the development of Malay anthropologists. Yeah, and his famous monograph is on Javanese culture. Yeah. Okay. Now, following his efforts to to lay the grounds of Indonesian anthropology in Indonesia, he also tried to establish various departments of anthropology throughout the archipelago. Yeah, so sorry. Yeah. So he spent his time to form the departments of anthropology in various state universities throughout Indonesia. In 1960s, 1950s, 1960s, there were 3 main universities, like I mentioned before: Universitas Indonesia in Jakarta, Universitas Pajajaran in Bandung. Bandung is the capital of West Java province, and Universitas Gadjah Mada as in the capital of Yogyakarta, a special province, followed by some universities in Indonesia, also in Outer Java, in Hasanuddin, for example, also in Erlangga, and in some other universities in Java and outside Java. So Kuncharaningrat did not stop there, but he prepared his students. He sent his students to get higher degree abroad, the first generation of students at the Universitas Indonesia. And he sent also some of the students to Leiden University later on to be the pioneers of anthropology in state regional universities. So sent some students to America, to Australia, with diverse choices of anthropological fields of study. So this was the seeds of anthropological specialization or anthropological field of studies developed in the Indonesian anthropology curriculum. So ethnicity, folklore, political anthropology, medical anthropology, economic anthropology, psychological and anthropology. And I was prepared by Professor Kuncharaningrat to develop the environmental anthropology or human ecology. Yeah? But then because of my position as a mother of 2 children, etc., so my other colleague was sent to USA to learn about ecological and human ecology under Professor Faida. He sent also to Australia some younger generation of students with emphasis on studying the others in Asia through mastering language, because at the Australian National University there's a faculty of Asian Studies, strong curricula in various languages in Asia. Now, I think Professor Yasmin was also here. She was sent to do her study on demography. There was also a strong department at the Australian National University with the field of study on demography. But then the younger generation again of the students was sent to the Netherlands, to Leiden University, to learn about Indonesia, because there were a pile of very rich materials on the historical documents from the colonial. So the colonial documents were well documented and administered in the library of Leiden University, and with a strong historical perspective of Indonesian cultures. So some students were sent there not only to learn about the historical perspective of Indonesian cultures by learning the historical documents, but also when they returned to Indonesia, Professor Kunchang already had in his mind, wrote a map. Yeah? Oh, he should pioneer the anthropology here, and she should pioneer the anthropology here. But unfortunately, not all of them agreed with the direction of Professor Kuncharaningrat. But anyway, some of them returned, but some of them also stayed in the Netherlands. Now, according to him, anthropology should have important contribution of studying the cultural diversity of Indonesian people. So we are very rich in our culture, ethnic groups, based on ethnic groups, religions, and origins, minority, foreign countries, origin, etc. So I could say that he was not only the founding father of Indonesian anthropology as a discipline, forming the departments, also laying the foundation for the theoretical basis, but also for the applied anthropology in Indonesia. In particular, during the New Order regime. So I will talk about this later on. But one of his book is Kuncharaningrat, is on culture, mentality, and development. And in this book, he mentioned about the need for anthropologists to learn what kind of positive values, cultural values, and attitudes towards development, in which ones the culture, the mentality, the attitudes, which hinders the development. Yeah. Now, okay. And besides that, Kuncharaningrat also said that Indonesian anthropology could only be portrayed through non-Dutch theoretical legacy. So try to apart the Indonesian legacies from the Dutch theoretical legacies. And according to him, what was needed for Indonesian anthropology was theoretical unity to produce knowledge as a basis for political and economic analysis of the values, yeah, that the bearers of different cultures are there too. So I will talk again whether it is possible or maybe it is not possible, it is not applicable, yeah. So this is the beginning of the Indonesian anthropology. Now, in my previous article, I also argue that Indonesian anthropologists focused on studying mainly the self, yeah, within the nation state and community boundaries. It's different when I was in Japan. I noticed that all Japanese anthropologists were studying abroad, yeah, doing the ethnographies in Southeast Asia, in other Asian countries, also the Australian, but the Indonesia were still studying the self. I could understand that even myself also studying the self, not the self is my own family, but we realized that Indonesia consists of very diverse ethnic groups. According to the Central Statistics Bureau survey in 2010, it's up to 1,034, but yeah, mainly people say around maybe more or less 700 ethnic groups, because in each ethnic group then there's also a subdivision of ethnic groups, like in North Sumatra, Batak people, there were 7 sub-ethnic groups like that, yeah. And we have 17,000 islands throughout the archipelago. So we could imagine we had different culture. We have different cultures, not only cultures but also languages, then religions, places spread in the large number of islands. So of course, this constrained the ability of Indonesian anthropologists to study the others in different cultures with their varied languages and customs. So when I visited the very east department in Papua, Universitas Cendrawasih, in Jayapura, the capital of Papua at the time, before was divided into two. I learned from the students that each student came from their own tribes, did their studies, did their research within their own tribes. And I asked, why you do not study the others, your fellow friends from other tribes? Oh, ma'am, they said, it is difficult to study the language. We have different language. So each tribe has their own, language different from one another. So it is good that we have the Indonesian language as the lingua franca. So I remembered also a couple from Japanese anthropologists. They would like to study Florinese people in Nusa Tenggara Timur, and they had to be separated. The husband did their study in this village, and the wife studied her ethnographic in another village. And why? Yeah, because each village also has different language. So imagine that. So I could say that the Indonesian anthropologists are still doing anthropology at home by studying the self within the cultural boundaries of the self, or studying. Okay, I could say that I also studied the others when I did my research among the Chinese origin or the Chinese people in one rural area in the west of Jakarta. And I stayed there. They are rural people. They are farmers. They are unlike my families, the Chinese origin in the urban area. So they are also the others. So as long as we have the access to language, that in using Indonesian as a lingua franca and territory, then it's okay to do our ethnographic studies. I did my ethnographic studies among the Javanese and among the Sundanese. Sometimes I cannot say in a proper language because the Javanese has a nine what do you call it, different layers of language. So then use Indonesian as a lingua franca, but it's not easy with the elderly people, yeah, to talk. But again, we are still doing our ethnographies within the nation state boundaries. Anyway, Kuncharaningrat initiated this effort to send his students to study foreign language and culture to develop the understanding of the others beyond nation state boundaries. So he sent two of my fellows, my colleagues, to Japan to learn Japanese language and culture by staying there, and with the expectation that when they returned home, they could develop the ethnography of East Asia. Also, as I mentioned before, some were sent to NU to learn about Thai and to teach about Southeast Asia. Unfortunately, I could say that none was sent to India or to Sri Lanka or to Central Asia. So as students, I didn't have the chance to learn about the ethnography of South Asia or Central Asia. Yeah, Central Asia. So as students prior to this initiative, so we learn foreign ethnography through literatures only. So Professor Kuncharaningrat taught us the ethnography of Southeast Asia and also Africa, ethnography of Africa. And then another lecturer taught us about ethnography of Oceania, only based on the existing ethnographic literature. So thanks to Malinowski and Bora and then Radcliffe Brown and others who already published their monographs, their ethnographic. So as students, we learn ethnography through literatures only until those who learned abroad return home. Yeah. Yes. So this is the situation of Indonesia. I present here the map of ethnic groups in Indonesia. You could imagine here, so diverse ethnic groups spread from Sabang here up to Merauke here, and from the north here and to the south here. But once when I taught Indonesian ethnography, I brought my students to the museum, in the Indonesian Museum in Jakarta, and I asked them to observe this kind of map. And then the question I asked them, they have to answer like a midterm exam. What is the problem with this map, with this kind of map? Say, what do you think? And actually, if we see this is Minangkabau, the area of Minangkabau ethnic group, but actually Minangkabau people are we can find them everywhere. We can eat their special culinary rendang, and in Minang restaurants everywhere from Sumatra, Kalimantan, Java, and up to Papua. Also Javanese mainly here, but then the Dutch colonial staff send the Javanese as laborers in the Dutch plantation here. So when I were staying in Medan, I met some Javanese people. From actually the descendants from their parents sent from Java. Also, when I did my study on integrated pest management or comparative study in Outer Java, I went to, you can go to Lampung. It is interesting province. I went there, but the first people I met spoke Javanese. So Javanese was also there. So Javanese, Minangkabau people, and many other are spread, especially during New Order regime, when Suharto sent the Javanese people as migrants, transmigrants, to various places in Kalimantan and to Sumatra. Yeah. So because of this very rich cultures, so Indonesia is indeed a paradise for ethnographic laboratory. So the famous Indonesianists, the anthropologists from foreign countries, came to Indonesia. Yeah? So the very rich cultural diversity attracted foreign anthropologists to carry out their ethnographic fieldwork in Indonesia. So classic ethnographies of both the ethnographic materials and the theoretical approaches became the products of their studies in Indonesia. Examples, we all know about Clifford Geertz. Yeah? He published Agriculture Evolution, Balinese Cockfight, The Religion of Java, Thick Description, etc. Hilder Gates, his wife at the time, The Javanese Family, Robert J., The Javanese Village, James Fox, Harvest of the Farm, Margaret Mead, and Gregory Bateson producing ethnographic films on Bali, James Siegel, Solo in the New Order, and many others up to now. Yeah. So the classic ethnographies actually enrich the ethnographies and theoretical, conceptual, methodological issues for Indonesian anthropologists to learn and to develop their own works. I think I also argue for anthropology as a discipline in the world. So thanks to all the Indonesianists, the foreign anthropologists came to Indonesia. And so this is Clifford Geertz, 1960, the region of Java. So I remember, so it is an interesting photo here. This is a picture of a ghost or spirit. When I was young, my mate used to tell me about the spirits, the spiritual beings, the ghost. The Javanese people believed on that, And this is the Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson trends and dance in Bali, and this is an example of Harvest of the Palm, published by James Fox. And there was already an Indonesian translation of Religion of Java, also Harvest of the Palm, so to enable the Indonesian students to read their classic ethnographies. Yeah. However, Indonesia also experienced growing problems, yeah, of Indonesia as a nation. So this influence our anthropology contribution or development as a discipline. So from ethnographic studies as well as practicing anthropology, we move towards engaged and public anthropology. Yeah? So this is the photo of our first president, the founding father of Indonesia, Sukarno, and his predecessor, Suharto. So there was a communist revolution in 1965. I think you also knew about this, The transfer of power from Sukarno to Suharto, yeah, from the old order regime to the new order regime. So Suharto has a strong vision of national development, managing local cultures to fit a capitalist and modernist model, yeah. So he applied this paradigm of national security should be the priority, political stability should be the prime efforts to achieve and economic development. Now, as mentioned before, with the publication of Kuncharaningrat, Culture, Mentality, and Development, so Kuncharaningrat also argue of the need to understand Indonesian cultures and people's mentality and how to deal with diversity in a way that supports Indonesia's national development, or if you find that some culture do not support Indonesian, and what should we do? So he developed a research on diverse value orientation based on Clyde Clarkson. I knew exactly how he developed this Clyde Clarkson's value orientation as a reference for his research with Indonesian anthropologists in several places in Indonesia. Then after Suharto's in power for 32 years, then there was another, then there was a collapse of the new order regime. And if you see here, these were all students, and maybe some of the students here are also our students from all universities in Jakarta, also in Bandung, etc. Yeah? So because we were already fed up with his authority, with his power in leading the Indonesian nation, so then he stepped down, and then we had the Reformation period in 1998. But it was not smooth. There was a communist revolution, we also had turbulence, chaos, mass riots. At that time, racial, religious, ethnic conflicts as well. In Jakarta, so many Chinese origin women was raped, etc. And there were also fired, burned. Chinese shops were burned, etc. So, and then ethnic conflicts emerged in Maluku Islands. But at the same time, we are moving towards the formation of regional autonomy and democracy. So what were our positions at that time? So the Indonesian anthropologists, so should we just kept silent or what? No, I say our students went to the street. So how about us? So I think we could not sit still, and then we were involved in finding solution of the religious ethnic conflicts. Two of our seniors were involved. One was still alive, one already passed away, in solving the religious ethnic conflicts in Kalimantan. And then we developed a new range of research and practical actions related to the turmoil, emerging problems, and the ways out. So I think this was the moment of the development of ethnographics of activism in Indonesia, or the Engage and or public anthropology. Yeah. So now towards the ethnography of activism, Engage and or public anthropology. Then in my in my article in that book, I made a table and presenting the emerging themes of Indonesian anthropologists' research and practices on ethnic and religious conflicts and multicultural issues, on customary law and cultural rights, agricultural issues and land grabs, village affairs, and one of the leading Indonesian anthropologists also were engaged in the formation of new village law, also in the latest like the improvement of culture law as a law as well, and then environmental and climate change, degradation, nature resource management, conflict over tenure rights, agrarian problems, conservation and community empowerment, also gender, sexuality and reproduction health, terrorism, radicalism and religious movement, etc. These are only some. Yeah, I could not write down here all, yeah, but you can find it in my article. Now, at that time in 1998, I was appointed as the editor-in-chief of Berita Anthropology. This was in the first found by Professor Kuncharaningrat, but then we changed it into Anthropology Journal Anthropology Indonesia. When I was appointed as the director, the editor-in-chief, I found a very few articles that could be published. So how? We lacked of qualified articles during that period. And at the same time, we experienced the turmoils in Indonesia. So why not? Then in 1989, I initiated a national symposium at that time due to, 30 years of this journal. So with the theme of Towards the 21st Century, Indonesian Anthropology Facing Culture Crisis, I stated clearly culture crisis. So many others said economic crisis, because of at that time all over the world there was economic crisis. But I said it's not economic crisis. We faced culture crisis because of the ethnic, religious conflicts, etc. Then we moved on towards the beginning of the 21st century. We had the regional autonomy, how to understand local culture, develop national integration, and then moved again a few other themes like post-reformation Indonesia. This is more recent. I just picked some. The challenges of social inequalities and inclusion, and then last 2019, before the pandemic, the use and abuse of diversity. This is the cover of our journal, Anthropology Indonesia. I was glad that during these conferences, we initiated to invite the Indonesianists. So the anthropologists who studied Indonesia, but they come from all over the world. Why don't you share your results to us? Because sometimes as students, we cannot have the access because of the poor library. Yeah, at that time, the library of our universities are not equipped well with what you call it, subscribing the good journals. Yeah, so how could we learn about the results of qualified ethnography? So here we could meet and exchange ideas of our research. It was good. I was happy with that, and it was continuing until now. The latest one, the last one, is in 2019 in Yogyakarta. And then, so towards the end of 2016, we had a very, very, serious religious conflict as well. So at that time, the governor of Jakarta, he was Chinese origin, a Christian, replacing Jokowi, the previous governor, because Jokowi became the president. Then he stepped up to replace Jokowi as the governor. And towards the re-election of 2017, he was the incumbent he again tried to be re-elected, but he maybe incorrectly, or I don't know, he cited first in we call it Surah Al-Maidah ayat 51. So this is Islamic, maybe my colleagues from the Islamic background can explain it later on. But he mentioned this, he cited this during his visits to the islands on the north coast of Jakarta. At that time, he just make that cite that as an insurance, yeah, for that. Don't worry, even though I'm non-Muslims, maybe I would do my best to be your governor in the future, for example, more or less like that. But then it was interpreted as blasphemy for the Islamic religion. So it then escalated the movement, a demonstration by Muslims, but mainly from fundamentalist, faction, not the moderate like Nahdlatul Ulama or Muhammadiyah, yeah. So the Islamic fundamentalism raised up and then strongly voiced the religious blasphemy and put the Ahok, his name, put Ahok into the court, and then later on he was put in jail. So there was a movement by hundreds of anthropologists just in a short period of time. I was involved in the beginning. Oh, we need to voice something that we cannot. We have to stand for multicultural issues. We are diverse country. We cannot just allow this racialism, intolerance perspective in behavior. And within a short period of time, I think towards the end of 2016, all anthropologists from diverse universities voiced together, talking in the media conference, in the radio, in the television, to voice that we have to protect our multicultural nation and against the intolerance. And early 2017, a number of Indonesian anthropologists decided to meet President Jokowi and then to raise this. Indonesians are in crisis, and we need the movement for diversity and an inclusive Indonesia. So I was very proud of this movement because at the time we were able to unite together, yeah, to voice this one, to voice this. Okay, now I move toward Indonesia within the global interconnectivity. Yeah. So anyway, even though we are mainly studying at home, yeah, anthropology at home, we are studying the self within nation state boundaries. Yeah, you can move to Papua, to Kalimantan, to others, doing also the ethnographic studies using the Indonesian language as lingua franca if you do not master the local dialects. But anyway, now we face the era of Indonesia within the global interconnectivity. This is a photo of a refugee family in an Indonesian camp. In 2020, the first group of refugees came to Indonesia. Not 2020, yes, not 2020, 2000, sorry. 2000 was the first year Indonesian received refugees from various countries. And at the end of 2020, there was 13,745 persons from 50 countries. And part of them came also from Afghanistan. And now maybe we have to accept also the Afghan refugees. So now what was happening with our anthropology as a discipline? Now, as I mentioned before, Indonesia is a very rich laboratory for ethnographic studies. But then in the last, I think, 2 decades, I myself was also involved. There was a growing partnership now between Indonesian anthropologists and foreign anthropologists in carrying out research and then publication and conferences from Asia, European, Australian, USA. Unfortunately, not many from South, Asia, but not from South Asia, unfortunately, but mainly from East Asia and Southeast Asia. However, I should say that as Indonesian anthropologists, we were still at home because they invited us to be their partner investigators. Their chief investigators are them from Australia, for example, from United States, and they were happy to build up a partnership with us, but then placed us as the partner investigators, and we helped them carrying out their studies again in Indonesia. But however, there were growing interests of Indonesian anthropologists also to study abroad, examine global issues. Some of Indonesian anthropologists and social scientists also study state border and cross-border issues. There was a panel on this in the Anthropology Symposium, the journal Anthropology Indonesia Symposium on state border and cross-border issues. My colleagues also studying transnationalism and migration across borders, like in Kalimantan. Also, the shifting identities of Dayak people, like last week talked about Iban. Iban was there in Sarawak. They were migrated, Iban, Sarawak, North Kalimantan, Sarawak, North Kalimantan, like that. Because before the post-colonialization period, there was no state boundaries. They were free to go to Sabah, to Sarawak, to again return to Kalimantan, etc. But after the independence, then there was a strict boundaries of the state. So this was an issue, also interesting issue. And also some of my colleagues and I myself did a comparative studies in Southeast Asian countries in particular issues. I did my comparative studies in Cambodia, Thailand, in Vietnam, but it was not last long because it's not easy to do study there. But the problem again of the language problems, I could not study Cambodian and Thai as if I were young students. It's so difficult, so I rely on translator, and it's not I told my students not a good example of doing ethnographies without mastering the languages. And also about the media digital connectivity all over the world, and then the development of digital ethnography. Now we also study the global threats, human trafficking, also cross-border refugees, like the phenomenon since 2000 up to now, and then the neoliberalism paradigm of natural resource exploitation, and so this caused serious degradation, natural resource degradation, deforestation, and the extinction of biodiversity, species, etc. And then this situation also induced to non-sustainable ecosystem, and during the climate change, then it caused natural disasters. We also face the global threats of Islam fundamentalism and radicalism and terrorism. And one of my students also, before he joined this terrorism, radicalism movement in Philippines and other countries, and now he became the experts on this movement, and we are still facing this. And I do not know what is going to happen in the near future with the condition of Afghanistan, with the Taliban. the Taliban came into power. So all these studies contribute to the advancement of theories, concepts, methodologies. So I always ask my students, even the undergraduate ones, to find the novelty. What are the novelties of your studies in relation to the theoretical, conceptual, methodological issues? So based on local discoveries. So local discoveries as the basis for theoretical, conceptual reviews. Yeah. So you have to argue for the novelties of your ethnographic research. If only replicating James Scott's theory or Geert's theory, then what's something new you discover from your ethnographic studies? And based on diverse works here, ethnographic works, there were also developed inventive approaches, like I myself developed interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, also transdisciplinary approaches, how to develop collaborative ethnography with the farmers in helping them to cope better with climate change, and as well also diverse ethnographic methods, yeah, for research engaged public anthropology. I practiced the collaborative ethnography. There was also multi-sited ethnography. Now there was our curriculum also teach students on virtual ethnography, digital ethnography, visual ethnography, auto ethnography, etc. So there were a development of ethnographic research methods in our curriculum. Now, how about the expectation by Kuncharaningrat, the late Kuncharaningrat? So I argue that it's impossible to have theoretical unity, as expected by Kuncharaningrat. Everybody developed their own what do you call it, novelties, criticizing Geertz, criticizing structural anthropologists. Yeah, I myself with my colleague also write my co-author write an article in this book, The Family Influx in Southeast Asia, Institution, Ideology, and Practice. So Hayami, Yoko Hayami and colleagues from Southeast Asian Studies, Kyoto University invited me to contribute my research and my writing based on my local ethnographic findings, but by doing that, I use that materials to criticize or to refuse the concepts of kinship, families, and households developed by Western anthropology. So in this book, there were a number of studies that examine or criticize the concept of kinship developed by Kesing and by others, which we have to learn when we were students. And I remember the late Professor Suparlan. He was a very a prominent Indonesian anthropologist. He studied on ethnicity and urban anthropology and political anthropology. His PhD is on Javanese Suriname. So he voiced a strong claim for the need for Indonesian scholarship that is both theoretically novel, should be novel, but born of local worldviews, but yet remain relevant to the national need for an authentically Indonesian democratic and civil society. It's hard. It's not easy to reach that or to reach that kind of situation of, I think, the Indonesian anthropology advancement in theories, etc. We are still moving towards that. That's why we are still always in the process of in the making. Yeah. Now, but anyway, we are happy. We are glad to see that the founding father of Indonesia, Pak Kun, was successful with the growth of Indonesian anthropology in the 21st century now, from three universities in 1950s, 1960s, to around 7 universities in 1970s, to now to 24 universities in 2021. So please see the red dots. So the red dots, these are the places where the Department of Anthropologists are now established. Not many in Kalimantan yet, but anyway, it's crowded here in Java, in North Sumatra. The blue dots is the Secretariat of the Indonesian Association, Anthropological Association. I think Ibu Dian is here. She is the Secretary General of our association. The black dots is the Secretariat for the network of Indonesian students. Now, because the Indonesian students learning anthropology in diverse departments, learning maybe different kinds of ethnographies or materials or theories. So there is a need to share, yeah, to know one another. So that's why Indonesian anthropologists develop networks for communication and collaboration. So we have now Asosiasi Antropologi Indonesia, Indonesian Anthropological Association, was formed in 1983. This is the logo. We also have the Association of Indonesian Department of Anthropology, because of the growing number of departments, and then the new departments still need to learn from departments, and we still need to assist the newly developed department, etc. So, and then we need to exchange our curriculum, etc. That's why it is different from the of this like Indonesian anthropologists as individuals become the members of Indonesian Anthropology Association, and then also a network for the students, ya, jaringan kekerabatan, kinship network for students of Indonesian anthropology was formed in 1989. So we have now these three networks for communication and collaboration. This is a photo of the 6th International Symposium of Journal Anthropology Indonesia at our own university, Universitas Indonesia, in 2016. Now, the last slide I will show you that Joko Widodo, the President of the Republic of Indonesia, now during the government annual report for the commemoration of the 76th independence ceremony just recently on the 16th of August 21, but our Independence Day was on the 17th of August 21. He wore the Baduy traditional costume. Very, very simple, and compared to this, yeah, costumes. And he wore these traditional Baduy costumes, so inspired by this ethnic group. So we had this ethnic group, Baduy people. So you see, our president could not, he has to use slippers, but you see, all of them do not have slippers or shoes, and they have to walk. They have to walk if they want to move. They want to travel from their village to Jakarta or to outer places, and all the colors consist of black and white. Yeah. So, and this is the village, the traditional village. And why our president wore that costume? He want to show the simplicity, but the very meaningful, what do you call it? The very, very meaningful cultural values that guide their livelihood, the Baduy people's livelihood. They live in line with the nature, happy. The nature was not being polluted, with no electricity, and by being able to produce sustainable, qualified rice as their main staple. And during the pandemic, none of them was infected by the COVID, and all Baduy people had to obey their leader. So this is, I think I'm grateful for Jokowi for his decision to wear this costume of the Baduy ethnic group. So we used to bring our students, the sophomore students, to visit the Baduy people village to learn about their culture. So I stop here. Thank you very much for your time to listen. Sorry if I moved too long in my talk. So thank you, Professor Suman, Dr. Ratna. So I return, to you.
Thank you
I
so
stop
much.
sharing. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Yunita, ma'am.
Yeah.
Your expertise and subsequent deliberation gave us a lot of insight on various aspects of Indonesian anthropology. Thank you
Yes.
very much,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
I hope
Welcome.
all the participants have benefited from your insightful presentation. Now the session is open for discussion, question and answer. If any one of you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and directly speak to our resource person.
Is there any question? Then kindly unmute yourself and directly put your question. Professor Yunita is there. Yes, yes, Professor. Yes, Professor Nathi.
Yeah, thank you, Yunita Winarto, for a wonderful talk. I really appreciate it. I learned a great deal about Indonesian anthropology, and I'm
Thank you.
getting excited to see how vibrant it is. Things are really happening.
Yes, thank you.
I have been through the World Council of Anthropological Association aware of the great resentment that numbers of Latin American anthropologists feel towards the Anglo-American core. In other words, these American and British professors will come in and they'll want to collaborate just as they want to collaborate with Indonesian anthropologists. But in fact, the Americans and Brits view themselves as the theoreticians. And they basically place the anthropologist, the local anthropologist, as no more than a field worker helper.
Yes, yes.
What a resentment. You were very gracious in describing foreign and Western anthropologists coming into Indonesia, but is there that kind of resentment that the Westerners appear to know better and that Indonesians would, of course, resent that? Does that happen?
Yeah, it actually depends on how the Indonesian anthropologists were able, to build what you call it equal collaborative works. For example, and position ourselves not as only your researchers, your research assistants, but we know better about our culture, and then in our publication, for example, like I published my my article with Professor James Fox from Australian National University, and then with the other professors, my counterparts, etc. So I understand that they appreciate the ethnographic data of our data, but then actually to what extent we were able to also voice or also to argue that our findings also contribute to what conceptual issues or theoretical issues. So in my collaborative work with agrometeorologists, this is an interdisciplinary work, even though I position myself as a cultural translator in a collaborative work, because I know I'm an anthropologist. In an interdisciplinary work, I'm not mastering the agrometeorologist. I'm not trained as an agrometeorologist. So I learned about agrometeorology, but he relied on me as an anthropologist to develop whatever, whatever approach you think it is possible to bring the science into practical, very, very practical messages, and how to help the local people to understand it. And I realized that it is not at all easy. So in my work, I position myself not only as literal translators from English to to local, but the cultural translators. Now, and also like this is my example, but I knew also a comparative studies on using digital ethnographic method. But how the digital ethnographic method could be developed in Indonesia, this should be based on local situation, not on the foreign experience like that. So how to locally place the studies, but at the same time, how could we also develop our conceptual issues and theoretical arguments. It is not easy. I know that the younger generation and my students, sometimes they have not been able to reach that kind of situation. Yeah. So, but if they understand, it is not easy to bring my students to understand that you have to produce a novelty in your ethnographic research. Don't only copy or don't only apply the theories developed by Clifford Geertz, by James Fox to Indonesia. But even though you are a counterpart, what kind of ethnographic novelty you are going to produce? If we are going to write in a publications, for example, even though I'm the second author or I'm the first author, and the reviewer always asks, what is the novelty of this? The novelty. And then so through discussion, but yes, it is not easy, especially for my younger generations and other part of Indonesia. We still have to, why? Because the theoretical understanding, we are lacking of reading ability, yeah, the literatures. But now we are thankful for the digital digital sources that we can just easily, what you call it, access from the internet. And ebook, it is very, very helpful for us. Yeah. So yes, I share your concern. Hopefully Indonesian anthropology will be stronger as a counterpart in the future. It is very challenging. Yeah, very challenging. Okay, thank you, Professor Matthew. Yeah.
Yes, any other question?
Yes.
Anyone is there? Ratna, is there any question?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Or any clarification?
No question.
Anyway, if there is no question, then let me start the discussion, little bit of discussion. That first of all, Professor Yunita, we are
Yes.
extremely glad and we are extremely thankful to you that
Thank
you
you.
have made a great job. No, you have made a great job
Oh,
to
there's, yeah.
represent, to represent
Yeah.
the Indonesian anthropology. Uh, I think all of our participants, they learn a lot, specifically myself, because there's an enormous expansions already happen in Indonesia in anthropology perspective. First of all, for our platform, from our platform, we salute the father of Indonesian anthropology, and this is the first time we knew that father. I
Yeah.
just not I actually not able to spell it rightly the name. So anyway, I can try that whatever
Yeah.
it is. So we are extremely happy that
Thank
we
you.
learned a lot from your lecture. So specifically, we thankful to Professor Diane. And she joined our platform, and we hope that in our future lecture also she joined, and also we can able to organize uh, this kind of some resourceful and powerful lectures that
Yes. Okay.
Professor Yunita did.
Yeah.
Now,
There was somebody, Pradipa,
yes,
raised his hand. Yeah.
yes, Pradipa. Look, let me
Yes,
put
if
some
you have
question.
any question, you
Then
can.
yes. The first things I just wondering that I have gone through the journal that is Anthropology Indonesia, right?
I beg your
So
pardon?
Anthropology Indonesia, the journal,
Yes.
right?
The journal. Yes,
So
journal
yes,
Anthropology
journal.
Indonesia.
Yeah, you are the editor in chief in that particular time.
In particular time in 1998 to
Okay.
2003. So during the Reformation period, during the shift
So
between the
So the
new
article,
regime.
whatever I have gone through the article written in Indonesian language. Is there
There
any
were
provision for English language?
bilingual. So
Okay.
the old one, the old volumes, there was an English abstract for Indonesian article, and Indonesian abstract for English article, and for some we published also the English version in the website, but I'm sorry, I'm no longer manage that. So, but now towards towards more on English language, but we have not been able to publish all in English. Yeah. So I'm sorry for that. Yeah.
No, no. Just I noted that this is the discussion that I.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, second things I want to know that what about the four-field approach in anthropology in
What?
India?
What kind of approach?
Four-field approach. Four-field approach in anthropology. That is the physical anthropology, social cultural anthropology.
Oh, physical anthropology.
Four-field approach. That means
Yeah.
four-field approach, right?
Yes. I understand. Like the language, yeah, linguistic
archaeology,
anthropology.
social
Yes,
cultural
yes,
anthropology,
yes.
and physical anthropology.
Yeah. So
So what
actually,
about
the archaeology was developed, unfortunately, separate from Department of Anthropology. So it constitutes the Department of Archaeology, and before Department of Archaeology and Department of Anthropology were in one faculty under the Faculty of Letters, or now is Faculty of Humanities. But then the Ministry of Education, I think during Suharto regime, moved us into Faculty of Social and Political Sciences and left the archaeology and so we are like different faculties. But for example, in the course of Introduction to Anthropology, we invited archaeologists to share or to give opportunity for them to also taught the students about archaeology. And physical anthropology was very strong in Gajah Mada University, but it does not belong to Faculty of Letters or Faculty of Political Science, but under the Faculty of Medicine, more in the biology. But the leading physical and biological anthropologist already passed away. But then we had a Department of Anthropology in Surabaya, Universitas Erlangga. Before we had the father, I forgot the name, a father, a Catholic priest who specialized his study on paleoanthropology. And then he trained his students, an Indonesian anthropologist lady. Now she was the leading expert on paleoanthropology or physical anthropology in that department. But before, we also had a medical doctor who developed the biological anthropology as a course, and we also have the evolutionary evolution on Homo sapiens, etc., on as a course. But to develop as a field of study, we lack of resources and laboratory. So this is the situation. The linguistic anthropology, of course, we had before our colleague specializing in linguistic anthropology, also a course on language, culture, and communication. But the other language studies were left in the Faculty of Letters. So it is not strongly integrated, the four disciplines separate like that. But then the Department of Anthropology in some universities are strong in social cultural anthropology. Yes. Thank you for that question. Yes.
Yes. So, next things we would like to know that what is the status of anthropology in Indonesia educational system? So you know that in China, anthropology is categorized as the second stream language, stream subjects, not the first stream subjects. So we would like to know that what is the position of Indonesian education anthropology or anthropology in Indonesian educational system?
Yeah, unfortunately, in the what do you call it, senior high school, in the high school. Before, when I was in the culture stream, I was a student in the culture stream. I learned about cultural anthropology. That's why I knew about the ethnographic studies. Then that there was an inspiration for me. It's an idea. Oh, maybe this is an interesting subject to study for the study. But then, yeah, then the change of the minister, etc. Then it's more on the sociology subjects, and then no anthropology subjects in the universities based on education. Like there was an institution for before there was not university but institution for education producing lecturers or teachers. There was a department on anthropology and sociology, anthropology like that. But recently, then more emphasis on sociology rather than anthropology, unfortunately. But then in the in the higher education, like Department of Anthropology, because of the strong efforts by Kuncharaningrat and then our efforts. Before, when I was a student, my colleagues in the classes only 7, 8, 12, like that, who were interested to be anthropologists. But now, recently, I have to teach like 70 students in one
That's
class,
great. That's great.
80 students in one class.
That's
Amazing. So the growing interest of younger generations to learn anthropology, because why? Because anthropologists is well known for the qualitative research methods. Yeah?
that's
So those who graduated like have a stronger qualification in carrying out qualitative research, actually ethnography, but they call it, the others call it qualitative, not survey, not quantitative. And many of them were recruited to be researchers in the survey on marketing survey, strengthen the survey, the quantitative approach with the qualitative approach. So that's why in undergraduate studies, I actually had the idea of strengthening the ethnographic methods. As long as you do your research, qualitative research in a good quality, then don't worry about. And yes, there are so many now research institution, government, etc. need those who understand not only the cultural aspects, because like all other disciplines or all other governments need understanding of local cultures, and we have all anthropologists in the regions, but also the research method, yeah, the qualitative. So I think we are happy and we are proud of the ethnographic methods.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, so
So,
now
so
it's getting stronger. I mean, especially for the advocacy for the policy brief. Yeah.
that's great. That's
Mm-mm,
great.
mm-mm.
So the last thing is that I just finished with the hope that in coming future the collaboration will begin between South Asia and that is and Indonesia. So you have mentioned that you have done a great job. You have done some of the work in East Asia and Southeast Asia regarding the ethnography, ethnological understandings. So you have not able to do some of the work in South Asia. So we just finished that my expectation with a great hope that in coming time we should build a platform where we can also collaborate between Indonesia
Yeah, and
and
South.
India
Yeah,
and South
India.
Asia.
Okay, so
So thank you.
Pradipa, maybe
Yes,
Pradipa
yes,
raised his hand. Yeah.
yes, Pradeepa,
Pradeepa.
Pradeepa, kindly put your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. Yunita. Good afternoon, Prof.
Good
Yunita and
afternoon.
everyone.
Yes.
I'm Pradipa. I was one of Prof. Yunita student in Anthropology Universitas Indonesia,
Yes.
graduate student. So I would like to ask more about physical anthropology and the discipline under colonialism, if you don't mind, Prof. Yunita. As far as I know, Dutch anthropologists at the time, colonial anthropologists at the time, have particular concern in physical anthropology. I wonder why does, according to your presentation, why does not it that it did not seem to take off in Indonesia? There seems to be less attention on physical anthropology by the colonial anthropologists in Indonesia. And I also wonder, in one of your slide, it was mentioned that Pak Kun attempted to break off from Dutch influence, if I recall correctly. Would you mind to elaborate about it further, Prof. Yunita? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. Yes, I'm sorry I didn't I didn't elaborate more about the role of Dutch anthropologists in developing the physical dimension of anthropology. Yeah? But I know that the discoveries of Sangiran, yeah, the Homo sapiens soloensis, yeah, and Sangiran is very very important, significant discovery about the human evolution. So I think Sangiran, and then recently more on Flores, yeah, Florenese, the short people. So, but who's Dutch anthropologist particularly studying that? I'm sorry, I could not remember at that time, at this time, yeah, who are they, yeah. But I learned paleoanthropology. I do not know. Father Klinka, if I'm not mistaken, Father Klinka. I think he's a Dutch, yeah. That's Father Klinka, and he developed the physical anthropology in Universitas Erlangga, yeah. So maybe next time we can ask Ibu Tuti as as his student to elaborate more about the role of Dutch anthropologists in developing the physical anthropology. But I think Father Klinka is Glinka, yeah, as a prominent role in developing that kind of study. But unfortunately, not all universities, yeah, develop that kind of approach. So sorry for my. Maybe you can explain as far as you know before when you learn from Dr. Budi Hartono. Yeah, okay. But I learned paleoanthropology from an American paleoanthropologist. They are not a Dutch paleoanthropologist. When I took my magister degree at Universitas Indonesia, I learned one course paleoanthropology from an American. Yeah, American one. Okay, now about, yes, actually, Professor Kunchar, as far as I understood, he doesn't want to cling to make Indonesian anthropologists as part of the Dutch anthropologists, even though we inherit from them, like there are many other Dutch instead of what I mentioned, like Buke, etc., who influence our theoretical and conceptual approach, ethnographic approach in Indonesia. But I learned from Kuncharaningrat his great, what do you call it, ideas, yeah, ideas of developing Indonesian anthropologists, not exactly as the Dutch anthropologist was developed in the Netherlands, because we are very rich, even though the Indology okay was developed by the Netherlands people about Indonesia, but I think, and mainly they did ethnology, armchair. I think not many, as far as I know, the young Jocelyn de Jong maybe did his study on Minangkabau. But how many Dutch people, anthropologists, came to Indonesia to visit, to do ethnographic in Indonesia? Unlike the American, yeah, the Australian, yeah, maybe not as many as American or Australian. But recently, like Benda Beckman, the legal anthropologists also did their studies on Minangkabau. Also, I knew some Dutch anthropologists did their studies Mentawai, yeah, Nias, etc. So there are some Dutch anthropologists. But what I would like to say is that, okay, the late Kuncharaningrat understood well that the historical documents, very rich, were there in Leiden University. And the historical perspectives are very strong developed by the Dutch anthropologists. So Indonesian anthropologists should also learn about the Dutch materials, but also learn about how to develop a historical perspective. So influence the theories, the development of theories. So yes, I think we cannot say that now the Indonesian anthropologist is similar to the Dutch anthropologist. I think it is so different. Yeah. Thank you.
Just Professor Yunita,
Yeah.
just I pointed out one of the important discovery in Indonesian fossil. That is, we are always said that this is known as Java man, and this Java man.
Oh, Java man. Yes.
Yes, Java man. That is the scientific name is Homo sapiens sinanthropus, I think. Homo erectus sinanthropus, and
Yes.
this discovery has been made in 1891 by Dutch anatomist, that
Oh,
is
okay.
Eugene Dubois.
Okay.
Eugene
Yeah.
Dubois.
Yes.
And
Yes.
from our very early study, actually in the course of anthropology, we studied two specific Homo erectus fossils, that is Java man and Peking man.
Oh,
And that
yes.
is
Yes.
very, very famous. And
Yeah.
nowadays,
Okay.
we are also repeatedly asked to our students that
Yes.
who are the discoverer of Java man.
Mm.
Okay. So yes, that is important, but yes,
Mm.
that is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, we salute the Kunjalaningra because without his devoted approach, without his long-term vision, the present Indonesian anthropology could not be established. So
Yeah.
that is very, very important. And
Yeah.
in
Okay.
Indian anthropology, we just remember Professor Nirmal Kumar Ghosh. He is one of the pioneers in Indian anthropology. He showed the direction. And after that, Professor Surajit Sinha and all these emerging, actually, the legend of anthropology we got from the Indian culture, right?
Yes.
Indian anthropological domain.
Yes. Okay.
So thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think if there is no any question, then we can proceed
Yeah, I
to
think
our vote.
look like we have covered all the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the
Thank
mentioning
you.
the Dutch anthropologist. Yeah, Pradipa. Maybe I have to add about that, but this is the based on my paper that
Okay.
mainly on the tradition and ambition
Yes,
of
yes,
anthropology.
yes,
So
yes.
not cover all. Yeah. Thank you
All.
for your mention. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
Right.
you,
Thank you.
Dr. Prof. Suman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Now,
Ratna, you can
yes,
proceed.
yes. I now request Puspalata Tiga, Assistant Professor, Department of Anthropology, Mrinalini, Datta, Mahavidyapith for Board of Thanks.
Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity.
yes.
Good afternoon, all of you. Thank you, our Chief Advisor, Professor Dr. Charyali A.D. Nahalegi, and our Principal Sir Apurva Bandhopadhyay, Mr. M. Q. Khan, Principal Sir from DNGC Itanagar, and our coordinator, Dr. Suman Chakraborty, joint conveners, Dr. Ratan Tayang, Dr. Taraka Ananda, Dr. Sujismita Singh Chaudhary from MTM, Taraka Ananda from USG Sri Lanka, and Dr. Ratan Tayang from DNGC Arunachal Pradesh, and our colleagues Gopi Riba ma'am, Tanushree Polly ma'am, Saswati Roy ma'am, and all of you, those are present. And today is the third lecture, and thank you everyone to completion of this very beautiful and interesting this lecture. Thank you, Yunita ma'am.
Yes.
She is speaker, today's speaker, and she taught us, she delivered very informative lecture. Thank you, Yunita ma'am. Thank
You
you,
are
sir.
welcome.
Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very
Okay.
much also for
Thank you.
your invitation. Yeah, it is a very honorable invitation for me to
Yes,
speak.
yes. Already So apart from this invitation, I put the invitation to come India once. Okay, I will
the
take
pandemic. The
I-
pandemic is
yes.
over.
If when the pandemic is over, please come to India. I will manage it for your whole things in Kolkata. No
Okay,
problem.
thank you very much. I visited at the time the Ayutthaya. What in the front in the sorry not Ayutthaya. I visited twice India, but not with the anthropologists. I'm sorry.
Okay. So
Yeah.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you
So
very much. So
I have
thank
to.
you for your
Yes, yes.
invitation and your mention.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I'm happy to be with to know you all.
Okay, that's all.
Bye.